Hello, hello. Welcome to Tammy's Table. I am so glad that you decided to pull up a chair and have a seat and join us in our conversation. The idea behind Tammy's Table is to create the same environment, the same feel, the same tone, the same energy that happens when you're at a great party, for example. Everybody ends up in the kitchen. I just experienced this last weekend. Everybody ends up in the kitchen telling stories and getting great advice, seeking wisdom. So that's what happens on Tammy's Table. Every week we talk very specifically about how to build resilience in different parts of your life. So how do you get through what you're going through stronger? And that's what we do every week. We have different guests on, like our guest today, who've overcome something seemingly insurmountable and came out stronger. And super happy to have Gian Jones, part two, as my guest today again. Hey, Gian.
Hey, Tammy.
Well,
How are
welcome
you?
back. Oh, awesome. How
Yeah,
are you doing?
I'm doing outstanding.
Excellent. Um, so last week, for those people that didn't hear last week's episode, quick recap. You got into some bad real estate dealings. You spent 5 months in prison where you literally sort of transform your life. You lost weight, you started reading, you were really focused on, brain development. So that was super interesting, just hearing like your mindset as you powered through that experience. What I wanted to talk about in the second part was now what? So, I'm going to begin at the end of the last story, which was, let me ask you a question. When you knew that you were going to be out like in a week, what were your plans? Like, what were your thoughts? Were you just like, I got to get out of here? It sounds like you were very sort of strategic while you were in there.
I don't know if I can tell you my most immediate plan, um,
I know
but
what your most immediate
but
plan.
it was of a personal it was of a personal nature. But once we got that out the way, um, honestly, I, my plan was really a long game plan. The other thing that was really unprecedented with my release. I came out in December 2007, and if you remember, the whole world was basically off of a cliff due to the mortgage crisis. So, I mean, I think in the last show I went back, I was saying 2018. It was really 2007. So 2007 going into 2008, my plans were put on hold just because there was no real money flowing. Like I wasn't able to make money. I'd lost my license, and I had to figure out that part uh, before I could go back into the sort of bigger game plan. Um, and so, one of the things in New York State, you can get something called a certificate of relief from disability. So I applied and got that. After probation, so the coming back part was intense. Also, too, just because psychologically, I had to contend with the fact that I had a felony, and that I didn't deem myself to be a criminal, but here I was,
Hmm.
black dude, educated, you know, was doing fine in my career, making money, but I got caught up, and so that was more of something that I had to deal with in my mind, just because I wasn't prepared for that, and coming out, having to deal with my own sort of self care. Um, but then on top of it, there was just no money. Like no one was making. Um, so there was that.
So I think you said something that is like really important. Everything you're saying is important, but this particular piece, you said coming out was intense. And it sounds like it was like a mind job. Which I think a lot of people get in situations that are intense and they just like freeze or they take no action whatsoever. They're just like stuck in the quicksand of whatever their situation is. So what was intense for you and what was how did you sort of train yourself? Like what were you telling yourself? to
Yeah,
manage
so
all
for
that?
me, yeah, for me, I lost my relationship, or had given up on my relationship after 9 years. No, no fault of her. It was all me. Just sort of needing to figure out how to operate in this new space. I came home. My house was in foreclosure, as millions others of homes were in foreclosure. I had no money. Had to, and I had to figure out how to make money, and I had to basically reinvent myself, which I contended with for a long time. I would say it took me 3 years. I would say all of '08, 9, and 10 to really get my mind right and to release the anger that I had for the co-defendants, who were really real criminals,
Mhm.
um, because everything was just harder. So it was already
Right.
hard, but then you come out and you have a felony, and it's just harder. So, but I rose above all of that. I wasn't going to let that monkey stop me. And I haven't. It's not been easy, but I fought and clawed my way back. Um, and I've allowed myself to be like water, just fluid, kind of move, ebb and flow in the situation as I need to. Always keeping in mind the end goal. Um, and I think honestly, that's what kept me going. That plus my faith and my belief in myself. I never once doubted myself. I was just now figuring out what my new self was gonna how my new self was gonna operate and how I was gonna figure it out. And I think that was the challenge. And I think also, again, I want to go back and underscore the fact that releasing the anger and forgiving the co-defendants was critical for my own healing, because it was creating a block. Right, those guys didn't know I was angry with them. Right? They were going on with their lives, whatever that meant. But it was impeding my own growth and you know just my own forward progression. I mean, eventually the
Mhm.
world came back, right? But it took me a long time because I was stuck in that sort of that rut for about 3 years. So like I would say 8, 9, and 10. And I'd say around 2011, 2012, I started to have a thought and just I can't carry this burden anymore. And I dropped it off. I let the baggage go and moved on. And now when people ask me about the experience, I don't shy away from it. I don't broadcast it, but I don't shy away from it. And I tell people it was a great period of my life. Um, I took a bag of lemons and made lemonade. Learned a lot from a lot of different people. Again, I was between Fortune 500 CEOs and CFOs and drug dealers from Newark. I mean, and everybody in between. So, and everyone had something to teach. Everyone's story was just interesting.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's it.
So I'm not gonna let you glaze over like some of what you said. I want to dissect it a bit. Um, let's start with this idea of anger, and forgiveness, um, which are intimately connected, right? Like it is a
Yeah,
process letting go of anger. I've been in that situation where I've had a lifetime of anger against somebody. Um, Making a decision to not be angry, I think, is the first step, right?
yeah,
And then
yeah. I
after
agree.
that, it's just a process. Like for me, I find like don't replay old situations in your head. It doesn't help. It just reinforces what you're mad about. How
Yeah.
about you? What was that process like for you?
Um, I think for me it was a decision. I replayed everything in my mind. I thought about where would I be today if, my relationship would be here if. So I did that for a long time, and then literally, like after 3 years, I kind of said enough is enough. I kind of got up and just made a decision to be over it, and I was over it. I let it all go. I think I went out and had some pancakes and got to living. Like at the end of the day, we are all responsible for our lives, right? Regardless of what happens to us, or what happens, what we create in our life. Like at the end of the day, you got to live with it. So So I let it go. I made it was a
Mhm.
conscious decision that I'm not going to live like this. I think when 2011 or 12, 8, 9, 10, and I think 2012, when that year rolled in, I was just like, I'm letting this go. This is done. And that was
Yeah.
it because I couldn't, that anger was holding me back from rebuilding and from figuring out what my next steps were. Every time I would think about that, I would go back, like you said, the replay, I would go back and think about, well, but what if this didn't happen? And so
Mhm.
I think in 2012, I said to myself, but it did happen. And here you
Mhm.
are, and like roll with it. And I
Yep.
think once I started taking that perspective, because those guys, I was never going to see those guys again in my life, right? So I was able to let that go
Mhm.
and forgive them. And the forgiveness part, I think, was a little bit, it probably took me another 6 months because, again, putting my own life back together was a challenge. And so every time something came up that was holding me back because of my situation, I would just be like, okay, I'm working on this forgiveness thing. Right. But
Yeah.
I eventually just let it go and forgave them. And I don't think about it no more. It's just, I'm moving, I'm in my new life, I'm in my flow. I kept in mind that nothing lasts forever. And here I am.
Have you forgiven yourself?
Well, I don't think I did anything. So that's the thing. I don't like I didn't do the thing they said I did. So,
Well, not even that, like, specific thing, like, more generally, like, how did I make such a like, for me, I'd be like, "Oh my god, how did
oh,
I make such a
sure,
bad, like,
sure.
decision?"
So,
Like, I'd be
yeah, I
mad at
forget.
myself on some level.
Um, yeah, I forgave myself from being naive, I guess, for being too trusting. But naive, really. You just, I never experienced anything like that. And I had processed hundreds of millions of dollars in mortgage transactions, and just that was that caught me off guard. So
Mhm.
yeah, for being naive, or back then I wasn't calling myself naive. I was calling myself stupid. I was just like, you're not stupid. This could really happen to anybody.
Mhm.
And so yes, for that I have forgiven myself, and I've taken a lesson from that. Right. So when I'm doing things with people, I'm super vigilant. Uh, a little paranoid, and I think a little paranoia goes a long way on the road to success. And
Mhm.
yeah, so like I said, I look at every situation. Every situation has a silver lining, and I've just, like I said, after 3 years, I chose to be in the silver lining.
It sounds like, you've sharpened your, discernment skills, which is
Just
generally what
yeah,
happens when you get burned or taken or whatever.
yeah, you're
Pass
correct.
them on.
Well, that's what adversity is for, right? You learn in adversity. Like I said to you last week, you don't learn in success. You learn in adversity and in failure.
Absolutely. So listen, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the rut. I think that's really interesting. Hey, so we'll be right back with Tammy's Table in just a minute.
I'm Gian Jones. I am a father, I am a business owner, and I'm running for Congress as Democrat for New York's 4th Congressional District. As a pro business Democrat, I believe we need leaders that understand the economy and that can move it forward in a progressive way. I will fight and advocate for families, for this community, and for business owners. On primary day, I hope to earn your vote. I'm Gian Jones, and I approve this message.
I like that commercial, man.
Thanks, Tammy.
Who's that guy in the commercial?
I know. I-
Hey, let's talk about the rut. I think that's so insightful. You said, like, the years that you were in a rut. Um I've been in a very long rut. I mean, not now, but I've been in that place. I think the part of the hard thing, Gian, is recognizing that you're in a rut versus, like, I'm doing this today because it's what I did yesterday and I plan on doing the same thing tomorrow. So recognizing the rut and then clawing your way out of it. Like, how did you yeah, what was your
um,
how did you decide, like, I'm in a rut, and What was that like? Because I'm sure people can relate. And then the
You know,
decision to get out of it. Mhm,
I think in 2008, um, I'd given up on my relationship for I shouldn't give it up. It was unfair for me to be in that relationship, even though the woman at the time was amazing and was willing to support me through it. And she did support me through it. Even though we broke up, she still supported me through it. But I wasn't my best. And you know, I would have, had I stayed there, we would have got married. We did that whole thing. But I just wasn't the person she had been in a relationship with. I mean, look, the prison thing changes you for sure. And it takes you some time to recalibrate yourself. And if you are a relatively strong person, you will not allow that to derail you too much. Um, However, in 2008, I remember being on my couch in my foreclosed home saying, all things are bad right now. I'm in a foreclosed home. I gave up my relationship with an amazing woman. I was dating somebody else for interesting reasons. Um, no money was really coming in. I was trying. I think in 2008, I think I made $25,000 for the whole year, and I was sitting there saying to myself, "People make this like this is what people make. Like when it's not a recession, how do they live on this?" And so that gave
mhm,
me some perspective and appreciation for working, the working poor, basically, right? Um, and then contending with the anger. I knew I was in a rut, and I was okay with that. I was going to allow myself to just rut it out, so to speak, right? And
what does that mean?
then
What does that mean?
you,
Run
you
it
know, like
out.
when you're in certain feelings, you just kind of you got to let them play itself out, right? You gotta experience it in its fullness, right? Because if you don't, then it'll always come back. That feeling or whatever that rut is you're going through, if you sort of don't deal with it, then it never really goes away, right? So it'll peek its head out. But I let all of it come out. I let it all come out, and by myself. I just did it by myself. And like I said, it took 3 years. But in 3 years' time, I said enough is enough. I'm not crying in my cup anymore. No more woe is me. You know, things happen,
Mhm,
and such is life. I'm never the person to say, "Why is this happening to me?" And I hate when people say it because I'm like, well, why not you? Like you called it
mhm,
into your life in some way, you
mhm.
know. So I was also examining that, like, how did I call this experience into my life? Like, and
Right.
that was the work that I had to do on myself,
Mhm.
because clearly, in some conscious or unconscious way, I created this experience for myself. And
Right.
so once I got right with that, uh, I was able to just experience it, take it for what it was, and let it go because being broke was not fun.
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
not sexy.
It never is.
It never is, Tabby.
It never is. Hey,
So
so
it was for me, it was a choice to move on.
I mean, it feels like everything is really a choice or a decision. Like at some point, you just have to decide that you want to have a different life. You want to have,
Yeah,
um, and I think that's what most people don't do. It's very scary. I think to make a decision is very scary.
I
But
agree.
what most people don't realize, like most things can be undone. There's not a lot.
Yes,
There's not a lot in life that can't be undone. So make a choice, make a decision. If it doesn't work, you can try again,
move on.
do
That's
something
right.
else. Um, hey, so talk to me about your reinvention. I've had the honor and pleasure of knowing you for a long time. Um, so did you go back into real estate? Like, we're gonna talk about your political career in a minute, but yeah, you said you had to reinvent yourself. What what
So
did
I did
what
go.
did that look like?
I never left real estate, but I had to re-engineer it. Even to this day, I don't have my real estate broker's license. I'm reapplying. But what I was able to do, that didn't require a license, was I started negotiating commercial debt, commercial loans, for borrowers, and just general real estate advisory stuff. I partner with real estate brokers, and just through the years, I've evolved uh, like a full scale advisor to clients, and but also a deal person myself. Like one of the things that I was very crystal clear about was that coming out of prison, I was very crystal clear that I wanted to get wealthy, and by any means necessary, legal by any legal means necessary.
Legal. Yeah, I was about
And
to say, let's
yes,
slide that in there.
yes, and and I went on a path to do that, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, and it has not been easy. I feel like when you're going for the gusto, you get these little demons that try to hold you back. Life, right? Just things pop
Right,
up,
right.
and I've been derailed, and I've always had to sort of refocus and say this is what I'm going for, financial freedom. Um, and that's different for everybody, right? So, but for me, I had my number and my process, and so I stuck to that. But in that process, I got married, I got divorced, I had a baby. I was living life, and now I'm closer to that financial freedom piece than ever before. But the other thing too, Tammy, and I mean, people say this, tongue in cheek, but the other thing that I always knew this, but I started really implementing it. Um, I just started keeping my mouth shut. I started moving in silence, right? Because everybody is not rooting for you, and everyone is not rooting for your success or your happiness
Right,
because they're
right.
dealing with their own stuff. And
Hmm.
so, and you and I talked about this, but like, I just things happen and they happen. It's far better to talk about what you've done than what you're going to do,
Absolutely.
and that's where I'm at. So I don't
Absolutely.
talk about what I'm doing. I'm doing it, and when it's done, it'll just be, oh, that's done, and that's it.
Yeah, I think moving in stealth mode when you're in reinvention mode or you're trying something new, whatever that something is, it's a little bit safer to do it on the down low. And then, like you
It's a lot
said,
safer.
it's a lot safer. Like you said, people don't always have your best interest in mind. And when you go out and blast to the world, you're doing X, it gives them a chance to sabotage it without you fully, developing it, whatever that thing is. Um, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And I also think in that reinvention process, you have to be careful who you surround yourself with,
Well,
right?
in those few years, I mean, I've a lot of people have come and go. A lot of people have come and gone, and such is life. Again, I've stayed focused on what was necessary and true to me.
Hmm.
And that's also been an interesting learning lesson because there's been people who I thought would be lifelong friends who just was here for a season,
Yep.
and that's okay. And I
That's all
don't
right.
wish anybody any ill will. Like I want everyone to be good. As a friend of mine said to me not too long ago, it's okay that you're doing well, and it's okay that you don't eat at my table. You can eat at your table, but just you can't eat at my table anymore. So I'm not. I don't wish anybody any ill will. I want everyone to do well, but just you move on. Things happen.
Yeah.
You ebb and flow. But yeah. But I've been moving much more quietly, um, and the results will speak for themselves.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk. I am very into politics.
Tammy.
Um I appear with Brian a couple of Fridays a month on Soulivity, and we mostly one of our topics is always politics. Um so when you told me you were running for Congress, uh the first time, by the way, we're going to talk about this. The first time, and now you're running the second time and you have laser beam focus. So talk about like what did you learn between those two runs, these two campaigns
Mhm.
that made you like hyper focus now? Uh-oh. You still there? Ian?
So the last campaign wasn't for Congress; it was for state senate
It said,
in New York State. And I learned a lot about the process of running. So you make the decision to run, and then there's a process in the running that voters never see. So in New York State, getting on the ballot and staying on the ballot is in itself a process, and voters never see that. So I learned a lot about that that I've been able to use in this process. Congress has been a little bit it's been a lot different only because the Congress is this is essentially the major leagues, so the stakes are higher, and people will go to further lengths to derail you. And I mean, Tammy, it's you're now playing potentially on a national and international playing field, so it's just
Yeah,
different.
so let me jump in real quick. So you are going to court tomorrow, right? To
Yeah,
try and
I'm
stay
just
on the ballot.
yeah. So I'm going to court tomorrow to defend my petition to stay on the ballot. I have an amazing attorney, Ali Najmi, out of New York City, who's an amazing election attorney. And
Who's trying to kick you off the ballot?
the Nassau County Democratic Organization, the Dems themselves are trying to kick me off.
Why?
Politics. Just they've gone with my opponent, Laura Gillen, and they don't want a primary. I mean, it's
Hmm.
just it's time, resources, money, but also I'm the only person of color running in this race. If it comes down to me and Laura, and there's a good chance that she doesn't capture enough of that vote, and she could
Hmm.
lose.
Hmm. All right, so you're fighting until the till the bitter end.
And I'm sure at the end of the day, we'll be successful.
Yeah, sounds like. Um, so talk to me real quick. Give me the soundbite. Like, why is your district so important on a national level?
So my district is America. My district is Republican. My district is Democratic. My district is also a large portion of unaffiliated party. So, and what I think is very interesting is the unaffiliated party voters are basically voters that are registered in the state of New York, but no party affiliation. So they can only vote in the general. But that is the group of people who will determine this election. They The last time I looked at the numbers, they were about 130,000 of those voters, and they're everybody. They're black, they're white, they're Jewish, they're Catholic, they're everybody. And so I think going into this election is particularly with the sort of dismal feelings on both President Biden and President Trump, voter turnout is going to be critical. There's so many people who have just resigned to just not voting, which is also
Hmm.
not the answer. Um,
Right.
And so winning the primary on June 25th will be the first most important thing that I need to do. And then once that's done, I think getting ready for November's election will be the second most important thing that I do. But this district is representative of America, right? It represents
Hmm.
kind of all of the views right here in the 4th Congressional District. And
Yeah,
I
it'll
hear it
be.
all. I hear the Republican views. I hear the Democratic views. I mean, I have Jews here. I have Muslims here grow at a rapidly growing pace. Catholics, Protestants, you name it, they're all here. And so you know you take something like what's going on in Israel and Gaza. There's views here, right? There are
Yeah.
people here,
Yeah.
right? So this is, in my opinion, the cornucopia of everything right here in this 4th district.
So it'll be interesting to see how you message. Um, I need to watch some of your old tapes, but that I feel like that is the biggest issue in national politics right now is that nobody's talking to each other. Nobody's listening to each other's opinions. And nobody's really talking to everybody. They're talking to very specific groups. But the what I was also getting at was that if you flip your district, um, that could cause a flip in Congress? Like, talk to me about that real quick.
Yeah, so flipping my district will help Hakeem Jeffries become Speaker of the House. So
Okay.
yes, this is very critical. That's also some of the politics being played, right? So more than anything, my belief is that Hakeem just wants a Democrat. But I say having the right Democrat in office is important. You know, I think one of the things that's important, particularly as being a business person, but for large part funding my own campaign, is that I can come in with my voice and the voice of the people. I really don't want too many puppet lines on me because I
Hmm.
want to be able to say what needs to be said, regardless of
Yeah,
who it upsets.
I hear you.
At the end of the day, we're all public servants. At the end of the day, you work for the people. And I think that sometimes is forgotten. Even the people
Absolutely.
forget that sometimes, right? So I think it's
Absolutely.
important that we keep in mind that as duly elected members of the Congress, and hopefully I'll be there, our employers are the people. And so
Yeah.
you have to be accountable to the people. Um,
Hopefully some of that fairy dust will sprinkle on people in Congress when you get there.
well,
Um,
one of the things
so
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say we're out of time, but I
Oh,
want to make sure people know how to support you. So, if you're in your district, New York District 4, uh, please join whatever event you're doing. But where can they go to donate?
so I appreciate all support, volunteers and financial support. Financial support can be all contributions can be made at Gian Jones for Congress. That's GIANJONESFOR Congress CONGRESS.com. There's a big donate button there, and you take it all $5, $500, 3,000, whatever you can do. Um, and I appreciate everybody in advance.
Ian, thank you so much for coming back on. I could talk to you forever.
I didn't know we
We
ran out
will.
of time.
I know. I was like, I'm never gonna get this guy to stop talking. Um, anyway, listen, we are going to be watching your run very closely, and I encourage anybody listening to this to make sure you support Gian in whatever way you can. And thank you again, Gian. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody back here next Monday for Tammy's Table at 12 Eastern. Have a fantastic week.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.